But my dad was the most common sense, never overreact, wisdom. I appreciate his wisdom. You know, I missed, after every game, I'd always call him. Now, a lot of times it was in a phone booth by the side of the road, but I never had a game where I didn't call him until he passed away. Every game I ever coached.
Even in the NBA?
Even NBA. My mother said those calls mean so much to him because he knows where you are. You know, sometimes they just need to know you're okay. You know, that's the thing about, you know, I don't tell my kids this, but you know, when your mom and dad die, you're not a son anymore. You know, it changes. That's like when I went to the NCAA tournament here against San Diego State. That's the first time I'd ever coached an NCAA tournament. After all those times, my mom and dad wasn't there. They always went. And I thought about that when we got to, where was that? Wichita.
Yeah.
That was the first time. But but I was getting all these NBA opportunities. You know, they were telling me no. They wouldn't hire me, but they were giving me an opportunity. And I knew that eventually I would get one of them. I was going to get one of these NBA jobs. It's probably going to be a bad one, but, you know, I coached Montana Tech. I coached Washington State. And God forbid here. But the last time I talked to my dad, the last conversation I had with him was about 30 hours before he died. And we talked about that. Because, you know, my agent was calling me, you know, starting in January. He said, look, these schools are going to make a move. And here's the ones that called about you. But the guy that kept pushing Houston to me was Bill Rorell. Because he was back in the plane. I would sit up there and I had a seat open beside me. And usually I had James Harden or Jeremy Lin or Chandler Parsons or Pat Beverly. You know, watching film after games, we'd eat and all that, and long flights. I'd call them up there and I'd go over the film with them. But after a while, starting in February, I couldn't meet with him because Bill Rorell was always sitting there. And he kept telling about Houston. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anything. And then Gerson Rosas, who was the assistant GM to Daryl Morey, he started telling me about it. Then I told my dad about it. I said, here's the 3 schools that don't want to interview me. They just want to hire me. And he said, what do you think? You know, and I had a bad attitude at the time. A lot of things that happened I just didn't understand. Whatever. But you know, he leave it to him to say the right thing. You know, coaches know how to talk to coaches. If you're not a coach, you know, it's not that you don't say, it's not that you say the wrong thing. You don't know how to say the right thing, you know, unless you're a coach. Sometimes as a coach, you pick up the phone and just say, hey, so-and-so, this is so-and-so. You don't have to say anything. Just listen to them. They just need to vent, most of them.
Kelvin said your dad always told you what you needed to hear in a way you needed to hear.
Yeah, that's what Eric Kelvin says better than I can. I told you those guys are smarter than me. Yeah, he had a way of, he just had a way. He told me what I wanted to, he told me what I needed to hear that night. But you know, he was a depression baby, so he was one of those, I had a mom and dad that didn't say I love you a lot. You know, they didn't show a lot of, you know, they weren't real lovey-dovey. You know, they just grew up working all the time. My mother probably worked 16-hour days. And my dad never gave me a compliment. Here's an example of this compliment. He never called me Kelvin, he always called me fella. He said, fella, your team played good tonight. If he said that, now he liked the players. He knew the players, so that's why I'd always back then we had media guides, right? He always looked forward to the media guides. He'd buy Street and Smith, the Blue Book, not Blue Book, what's that called? Those you know what I'm talking about, those
Athlon.
basketball, Athlon. He would, my mother said he would read them, he'd word the pages out reading about them. He'd say, my mother's name was Eva. He said, Eva, did you read this about Bella? You know, but that would, you know, he loved that stuff, but you know, he just didn't know how to. But his parents weren't like that, so he didn't know, and I just understood. But when I needed something, I needed to talk, went to bed. My mother had a way of saying the wrong thing sometimes, although she was the brains of the outfit. But my dad, I always thought he could be a guy that could write for Hallmark cards. He'd just say the right thing. Real simple. Didn't go overly overboard on anything. You know, but that's one of the first times I remember him being complimentary, you know, about the way I coached and all that stuff. So I'm not going to tell you what he said, but it was, you know, it's one of those things where you go, it's issue, that is issue. So, and what was unique about that was, you know, I never talked to him again. That was the last time I talked to him. I got a call from my sister's daughter. I was in Los Angeles. I was the head coach of the Rockets then. Kevin's mother had died. You know, I had 2 stints. His daughter was doing, she was studying abroad. I think she was in Australia, actually. She caught disease and died, and his mother died. And then I was the head coach both times, but we were getting ready we had just practiced at UCLA, and we were ready to play the Lakers the next night. When I got the call at 5 o'clock that morning, which would have been, might have been 4 o'clock. It's about 7 o'clock in North Carolina. And by that afternoon, I was on a plane headed back to North Carolina. That was it.